What is good, YouTube? Is Aaron back here with the channel, and today we've got On the Bubble, episode 24. Our diversity hire is unfortunately a bit busy, so we had to bring in another international enthusiast, or not enthusiast, individual. How are you doing, Santoli?
I'm good. I like to see that Canada is considered international, but I'll
Yeah,
take it.
you're North America, but like in the grand scheme of things, you don't want to be American right now. So I think it's a fair classification for you. How are you doing, Logan?
I'm doing all right. Not too bad. How about you?
Uh, Vegas didn't go how I wanted, but otherwise not bad. I started a new job this week and just doing job applications, trying to get hired for the fall. So moving on with life. So real quick, like just housekeeping stuff. Just a heads up. I'm gonna update my Metafy article tomorrow for like the Vegas stuff. I didn't get around to that. And then Rahan is writing an ElfNet article. I think he told me. I'm gonna review that for him. He's gonna post it on my Metafy. I'll give the details on that on my Twitter or YouTube whenever that ends up happening. So keep a lookout for that. Any content stuff y'all have coming up that you want to talk about real quick? No.
Not too much, no.
All right, fair enough. Wish Santoy luck in the WCQ for Master Scroll. When's that coming? Like next month, right?
It's June 20th weekend, I think. So
Okay, so that's still pretty far out.
still a while's ways. But
yeah,
the match should
That's like
basically
the
be that
regional qualifier, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the DC Cups are already done, right? The only one left is the WCQ.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Alrighty, so that'll be coming up in the near future. Otherwise, there's just like Columbus. I think there's a couple Central American events, and then we're like approaching national season already. Like that starts, I think, in a couple weeks. Like I think UK's is first in beginning of May. So yeah, we're gonna talk about the end of this format because we're kind of expecting Blazing Dominion to shake things up. Banlist coming up theoretically, hopefully. And then we'll kind of preview Blazing Dominion along with that conversation. So let's hop right into it. So yeah, we had YCS Guatemala City the week before this one. We'll kind of briefly go over that and then kind of look at the trends that led to for Vegas. I mean, that's nothing crazy. It was a 334 person event. Julian Kahan won at the Draco Tail. And we just see 12 Draco Tail and top 32, 11 Yummy, and then just like a spattering of other decks. Bunch of the usual suspects in terms of names. We see Heisem. Luciano Jr. Is a good Brazilian player, friends with Paulo. He was on his 3v3 team this weekend. I don't recognize all the other Central/South American names on here. Sako went down top 16. Francisco continued his run of topping. Ruben Yassine, Kamal Giancarlo is a friend of most of ours. So yeah, the bunch of like the normal names that I think we're used to. I think I recognize this Renato name as well. I think he's in the world's race for, I don't remember exactly. This is Peru.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is like Draco Tail Yummy kind of masterclass. When like looking at this event, I kind of just expected more of the same going into North America. Did y'all expect anything different after this event moving into it, or is just kind of the expected outcome based off of what we've seen so far in the meta?
I think it's pretty much the same. What we've been expecting. I think Yummy builds are kind of moving towards Fiendsmith Yummy, which Vegas really reinforced that. But apart from that development, I don't think there's been much that is that different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised at like the popularity of Yummy Fiendsmith because like in my experience, that deck actually just has like a 30-70 matchup into Draco Tail.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little surprised some of the better players have been choosing it, but it's been working out. So maybe I'm wrong, but I have not been a fan of that deck like at all.
Yeah, I don't like.
I think the addition of I think the addition of the Camilla and Sky Shaker package is a lot better because now you can play retail without recourse. So
Yeah.
that fixes a big issue, and definitely swings the matchup that like towards Yummy a bit more. But I still agree it's an awful matchup into Draco Tail. You basically either stop them completely or you lose the game. And it's kind of weirder thing where it just feels like the deck has solo agency. Like you just play hand traps, you hope they do enough, and then you summon guys and hope they stick. Like it's just
and you also
very
don't
weird
have.
to me.
You don't really have extenders either. It's kind of just like normal summon plus Marshmallow. Going
Also,
second
really
engraver very rarely resolves. Sorry, what's it, Logan?
I was gonna say I don't like playing Yu-Gi-Oh decks right now that don't really have like a functional game plan into Fua. Like you can argue like Snatchy Pass is functional, but it's really not against Draco Tail or Radiant Typhoon, or really not even hardly into the mirror match. But
yeah,
I'm not a fan of this deck like at all.
Yeah, so this is Francisco's list. He's the one who's effectively been like innovating, quote unquote innovating, but he was the one that first introduced the deck like right after whatever it was, Banlist, like 300 YCS. He's been playing this entire format, topped I think every event he's entered with it. he put Hornet drones in, like all this stuff. I think is pretty normal. He put a Croaky in, which I assume is like to try and help the Draco Tail matchup to a little bit. Chameleon, obviously, and then like you said, essentially we got Retail C. Droll moved to the side deck, which I think was a pretty responsible decision based off of how much Draco Tail there was in the format, and especially with Yummy moving over to Veensmith. And I think that's why we saw pile decks kind of fall off almost completely. Like we saw a little bit of Azamina Yummy further down, like we saw Kamal and Ruben playing it. But overall, like that deck kind of like fell off the map. I think that has a big part into how much Droll we saw like from Jesse and like the Draco Tail decks over the format. And eventually people just cut on. They're like, if I'm gonna get Drolled game one, I can't ever justify playing this 60 card slop deck.
Those decks are just massively overrated as well. Like there's times where we have pile decks that they all bridge into each other and they're insane. But the bridges for a lot of the pile decks right now are either fake or they require more garnets, and it's just like, why are we playing this? Like there's just the weird point after the 300th where everyone was just hyping up these pile decks, and I just think they were like never that good, to be fair. I think it was less that the meta shifted to beat them and just people play them and realize they have massive issues. So
Yeah, so the two issues that I identified pretty quickly was that like they were, especially with like the 60 card, like the Triff one that he first introduced, it was extremely linear. Like you saw like whatever one engine, it was like Yummy into Azamina into whatever, or like Typhoon into Yummy into Fiendsmith, like or into Azamina. You couldn't like go back and forth between everything. Like historically with a lot of these decks, like they had like bridges like two or three different ways, like the Yummy Radiant Tri deck. That deck could actually kind of like go back and forth pretty easily. But that deck, it was only like one into one into one. Like it was never like that. And then also going first, Chummies were just like really, really oppressive against you. Like you actually couldn't do anything into them. And you're playing a 60 card deck, and you can say everything you want about like, oh, like I have Thrust and I have Ash and like whatever callback cross, but that's still like at best like 8 or 9 cards in 60 that you're just gonna have like a really dog shit board into Fua, and even like Perulia, like that deck kind of struggles into it just because of how many hand extenders you have with like Witch and whatever Cupsy and stuff. So doesn't surprise me that deck fell off, but I think Droll definitely like helped. Because we saw originally like the Draco Tail deck that it was originally what the pile decks were planning to beat was like I was gonna like outgas it, but also adding in Albaz as well. Like that makes the Draco Tail end board way more robust and harder to kind of shut down. Like when there's graveyard interactions with Renbrum, which we've seen get added over the course of time. Like I think that the Draco Tail end board is way better than people kind of give it credit for. They're like, oh, I have C3 traps, but there's actually like an extra 2 or 3 interactions between Jade and Albaz and sometimes Dogma that it's just way more difficult to kill the deck than people initially thought.
I think Draco just feasts on these unholy decks. Like the decks that you draw a Garnet, it's just, you're drawing one or two, or you're drawing suboptimal hands. You have to play a weird way. I think Draco is just insane to those decks. So I think it was just a very weird take from the community that those decks were ever built to beat Draco Tail, because it wasn't. The best things are just heavy decks that you can just keep slamming things on the board, or decks that abuse Impulse and Ash and retail like Malice. But stuff like VS is always going to be better into the Draco Tail than the decks like those, because you just draw 5 engine cards, but all the engine cards just work together, as opposed to having engine cards not work well with each other. So
Agreed. Now this is Julian's list. We see him bumping, falling back at the 3, dropped at 3, but like over and two Ecclesia, no Exton, 2 traps, but like nothing crazy. We see Meows on the side, which I think was like a pretty like good adjustment into the Fiendsmith Yummy variant. And then we see Storm Duster, which just helps check Di-Fi. Like I think this is a pretty clean deck list that like is adjusted well for the meta. He cut Albalan on us as well, which is not something I considered. I'm not sure if I would agree with it. But I think the threat of it alone generally provides a lot. So I guess he was just trying to like justify not including it and just playing like SP instead. Because as long as you're still playing like 2 Albion, like you still have and like Lubellion, like you can still pretty consistently resolve Brandon Fusion going second in an impactful way. But I'm not sure if y'all have experience where like you need to send like Urgla off of Albalan on us and it being super impactful. But like if Brandon Fusion resolving Flame's not an issue, and I don't know how much it actually comes up until you play this deck way more than me. Do you have any thoughts?
I think it's everything comes up. Like the one thing is people always look like, oh, what card doesn't come up when you're choosing extra cards, but it's not the way looking at it. Especially a deck like Draco Tail, you have like extra 3, 4, 5 cards that you can consider putting in this extra deck that aren't there. The one you just mentioned, Tekka's already there. Feel Outrageous is another card you can consider, and so it's just you picking a second Secretarion. It's just you picking what ones come up the most and which ones you're most or at least unhappy with losing. So I think it's just personal preference. I don't think there's much, this is right, this is wrong. I don't think he's saying the same meta call. It's just personal play style, what you prefer. Especially for things where it's like they're matchup dependent. You cut Albente, so you cut second Secretarion, and you play against all Yummy, and you feel like you're a genius, and then you play all mirrors, and then it's like, well, I made the wrong decision, and that's just
Yeah.
matchup variance, which you can't really predict, and it's not really a meta call thing. So it's something that I think that you don't really gain much looking over. It's just make a decision on what you like and go from there.
And Logan, you play this deck for the 3-3.
Yeah. The only thing I'd like to add is I think Titaniclad was like an addition that a lot of the better players started to make, not really as a Liger out, just more so as the end phase like disruption to summon Fallen Albaz from your deck. That card was like ridiculous for my team the whole weekend. It was ridiculous in testing. It was also a reason to play like more copies of Fallen of the Virtuous. I know a lot of people were cutting down to one. I think that card was like, if you play Rimbrum and you play Titaniclad, Virtuous is like one of the best cards in your deck, if not like the best card in your deck. That's not like a Draco Tail starter. Yeah, there's just like infinite games that you get into where your opponent half boards you and you have like one Virtuous after they stop you, and like end phase you get to a Mirjid, and like if you stick a Mirjid, I feel like you're winning most of those games against almost any deck, especially against Yummy. Like what, that deck actually just can't beat a Mirjid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then additionally, like he upped Cartesian Ecclesion. I assume like it was also in part to like one, just have more access to those cards, and two, like more in phase discard fodder for cards like the Albaz. So I think it's a good adjustment if that's your game plan.
Yeah.
So yeah, we saw Julian win obviously, and now we are on into Vegas, which very surprising result I think in terms of what decks won the event. I think the players that won, like Matthew Ricard, he's whatever 3 for 5 in terms of like wins versus tops in events. He's got the top cut sense, like he just very good at Yu-Gi-Oh, obviously. And then we see Armage K9, which is something I have next to no experience with, and am very surprised that it did perform well. This is Disencoder, right? And he just, I mean, to be fair to him, he's been grinding the deck infinite. So I assume he played the deck rather well. And then Malice, which was the deck that I chose for the event, and I have reasonable. I don't know, that doesn't surprise me that the deck performed well if you have a favorable matchup spread. I did not, so I kind of regret the choice, but you can't really do too much about that. Like if you expect to play against a lot of Draco Tail, which is what I did after Guatemala, I was like, all right, Malice is the deck I'm the most comfortable with, and I think has a favorite matchup. And then I play against 1 in 12 rounds. So I'm like, all right, well, unlucky, I guess. But yeah, like other than that, we just see Draco Tail. Yummy was, I think, surprised where it was like 16 out of the 48 decks, which I think was like more than I would have expected going into the event. Like I would expect more Draco Tail. And then we see 8 Malice as the third place deck, and then a bunch of just like small spattering of other decks. So Logan and Simply, both of you played all 12 rounds with me. So yeah, just I guess give us a little bit of your thoughts on how the tournament went for you and any trends that you noticed.
Yeah, I would say like sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say like
Well,
day one, I played a pretty even spread. I think I played like 2 or 3 Draco Tail, 2 or 3 Yummy, and then like a couple of rogue decks. We were talking about it beforehand if like the seeding matters on where like what decks you play against, and a lot of people tend to think that like the C seat plays against the most rogue. I don't think it actually matters that much. I've played like 4 3v3s now, and I haven't really noticed much of a trend. The only trend I've noticed is sometimes players will end up either picking their weakest player to put on C, or they'll pick like their strongest player to put on C to try to play against the weakest player. I also don't think that matters all that much. All my teammates, myself and I, we all played against like a pretty even spread against like all the meta. We played against Malice, we played against K9VS. Mitsu played against multiple Lunalights. I think the only deck we really didn't see much representation of is Radiant Typhoon. I think between all 3 of us, we only played against one. I played against one the very first round, but and then yeah, day 2, same thing, was just Yummy and Dracotel pretty much. Yummy, Dracotel, and K9VS.
Steven?
I had Yummy City. I played against 7 of it out of. Well, I had 2 round bye, so I
10 in
played.
Swiss and then top 8, so 11.
Yeah, 11 rounds. So I played against not 4 of it. But that was very much just seemed like a seat thing. Like my teammates did not play against that much of it. And I agree with Logan. I think trying to metagame the seeding is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Like people always try looking for some weird edge when the edge is just playing better or having a better deck list. Like there's no secret to how to get better. But people are always trying to look at being cool and trying to find those things, and it gets ridiculous. But yeah, I was really surprised with how much yummy there was, especially in top cut. And like I said earlier about the deck, I just don't think it's that good. Like it's not bad by any means. It's just more of a deck I can't understand why so many good players gravitate to, because like I said, I just feel you have so little agency. Like
Yeah.
especially in the Dragon's Hall matchup, you either hand trap them to death or you lose. Like
Mhm.
you have so little room for outplay, because you're even the best engine hands, you're still losing to like Draco Tail setting 3 traps.
Yep.
Um, so that was surprising, but I mean, people are welcome to play what they want. It's by no means a bad deck. If you feel that the strategy of just hand trapping them to death is consistent enough, then by all means play it. And I think it does have a very good matchup spread other than Draco Tail. Like VS is a good matchup, at least to some degree. Malice is a good matchup. So you do get percent points elsewhere. I think Mitsu is also good, even though the Mitsu cards are so good in the Yami. It's just the fact that you need to hand trip to death too much because your deck's super inconsistent. So I think it was a good medical that way, but it was somewhat surprising just that the people gravitated to that type of deck. But apart
Something
from
that's
that, I don't think there's too much weird stuff.
Yeah, something that's weird about the Yummy deck too, picking that deck is like, even if you hand trap the Draco Tail deck to death, like you triple, quadruple hand trap them, your Yummy deck loses to like one of their non-engine like a pretty high amount of the time, like one Fender, one Virtuous, like even just like drawing a horn. Sometimes you lose to a horn. Like the deck isn't like some crazy. It's not like you're summoning Snake Eye Ash every time. You're summoning like a Lollipop and a Cookie, which are like actually just vanilla monsters into like a Fallen of Virtuous.
Yeah, I think I agree with most of the sentiments from y'all. Obviously, deck performed well. Like, it's just good, consistent deck. But yeah, like the way that like I was like kind of like not scrambling, but I was just like I don't really know what I feel like playing for the event. And I ended up on Mouse obviously, but like I was looking at like Yummy because that's what one of my other players played, and I just looked at him like I don't love the mirror match. Like a lot of these hand traps are just bad into the mirror, and then like you both mentioned, like your number of starters I think is generally very low. Also pretty rough into Fua. So I think this is like more of a player argument than a deck argument. Obviously, it's like solid enough. But I don't think Yummy is just like leagues better than anything. I think it was more just like a representation thing of this many good players played it, so this many topped. I think like the retail thing is definitely a benefit that the deck has, and maybe like the other thing I was considering in Drago Tail is the Magistus build. I was like, if you play against Yummy and you just have that in your deck, like you very rarely have the issue of getting hand trapped out. Like you can just gas through everything that's not whatever Fu up really. So kind of surprised to see that deck not perform a little bit better. I know Paolo and his team I think played it. I think they maybe lost the last round and not top 16, but that was definitely something that I was considering doing, and I played that deck the week before in preparation for it. Oh no, they didn't make top 16. I like. So yeah, I think that would have been
I
an
think that
interesting.
deck
Hmm.
I think that deck is worse into fair hand traps than people get credit for. Like if you cut Draco Tail names, it means a lot of your power spells aren't quite as big power spells. It does conflict on itself sometimes because you have to go through like a synchro, then you open Brand Fusion, but then if you want to leave
Mhm.
Brand Fusion, you play in the retail. So I don't necessarily agree with the assessment that kind of build is better into the hand traps that Yummy's playing. I think the solution is just side Fenrirs. My day 2 experience was beyond miserable. I lost every die roll, and then every single game post side I got retoweled, other than one where my team already lost. So, but even when that was happening, it like I still won a fair number of those games. So I think that
Mm.
like even when I'm getting like normal cart, activate Rahu, get retoweled, and then get imprint my cart, so like I'm just neg winning and still winning the game. It's just a testament to like I really don't understand the appeal of it, but yeah,
Mm.
we already kind of talked about that.
Yeah. Alrighty. But yeah, like there's I think this is. I was talking about like the players that did top. There's a lot of good teams. Obviously, like 3 of the top 4 teams or 4 of the top 4 teams involved international players. The finals was 2 French and then a Canadian. We see Nesh, obviously a world champion of Master Duel. And then Santoli, 2 of your teammates were his other 2 teammates from that world championship run. So Europe definitely showed out in this event. And then yeah, we see Eddie Strong, who has top forward every Genesis event, obviously come back to modern and still perform well. So it's nice to see that Susie, Enzo, Gabe, and then I want to give a quick shout out to some of our local guys, Aries, Arden, and Ricky, who were able to get their first top. So or Aries and Ricky's was their first Arden top 4, but a shout out to them. But yeah, I guess we'll briefly look at this Armage deck. Does anyone here have any idea what this deck does or like why
Yep.
it performed as well? All right, perfect.
So this is an example I think people have often looking at rogue decks where they just have some opinion on the deck immediately, like before anyone's put time into it, and it's just opinion that makes no sense. Like I think a lot of people would just say, "Oh, Art Mage is this Giga Go first deck that even then it just loses the Fuwa stuff." And we see this constantly with rogue decks. Like it was the same when I went with Exosister. People were talking like that deck was tier 5 when it had just won a YCS like 8 months prior to cash format starting. But it's kind of one of those decks. Like you're playing K9 cards, which are obviously very good, and I'd probably rank this deck. I mean, it's definitely better than K9 Fur Hire. It's
Low
probably
bar.
around, yeah, probably around K9 Christian's power level now, maybe a bit worse. Depends on the meta. But basically, what the cards do is they are just extremely good into Fuwa, which again is kind of weird because it's meant to be an FTK deck, quote unquote. But they're worse than Aprilia. All of them can summon themselves from hand if you have an Armage card, and then while they're summoning themselves, they have an additional
have
effect. So
effects.
either draw or one adds from deck, one adds from grave. And so what that means is, unlike the vast majority of K9 builds, which have issues with Purge and Imperm, mainly VS and Christian does to some degree, this deck has a lot less of that issue because as you're just summoning from hand, you can dodge them. Okay, you can't dodge Purge, but it's like you're not losing the body or anything. And it's very good into Valor. So I think this deck is just phenomenal into the lineup of Fiend Smith Yummy. I think this deck's end board is actually a bit more fair, where breakers are good into it because you're not doing anything degenerate, and a lot of the interruptions from the Armage cards are just like targeting cards on board and stuff like that, or cards need to stay on board. It's super polyable. So I think this is a very good meta call into Fiend Smith Yummy. Naturally, it's just Disencoder's pet deck. But I do think it lines up well into the Fiend Smith Yummy decks because you can just play through the hand traps. And naturally, the K9 cards are good into Draco Tail. So, in my opinion, this is just a tier 2 deck that he plays well, and it's his day. So, I think it's not like it's obviously surprising to some degree, but it's not like I look at this and wonder how on earth did this top. It's by all means a functional deck, and people having low opinions of it because they don't play against it much doesn't really mean much. It's still very solid.
Fair enough. Does it get anything better or any new support in Blazing Dominion that you know of? I don't think so.
Yes.
It does?
So they do get all the Power Patron decks. So it's this Doomsday and Elvenotes. All get a pendulum where they all do stuff when placing the extra deck. So they're all very, very efficient cards, especially going second because they usually interact with the board. And if your opponent tries to move them, they still do something. This one gets one where it is if you put in a scale, and if your opponent tries doing something in response to your Armage card, you can negate it and then destroys itself so it searches. Which sounds kind of insane, like it's a crossout or a call by. But the issue, like I just said, is that this deck is weaker into breakers. And so it doesn't really fix the issue that way. It's a very solid card still. It can be special enough medias to pure, but overall, I don't think the deck is elevated a super large amount. Especially if we get a list where we don't have the K9 cards anymore and we're playing pure. It's probably just a lateral movement in power level. Naturally, something like Disencoder can talk about it more, but it shouldn't be. I think this deck's just underrated now. But I think it's just still a tier 2 deck that if you want to play, you can. It's fine. It has a functional game plan. But it's nothing, groundbreaking.
Alrighty, fair enough. The one thing I forgot to mention was that this was actually, I think, a smaller Vegas in the past few. And maybe the smallest one ever. I'm not exactly sure. It was like 370-ish teams, so just under 1,200 duelists. Am I right in saying that? I feel like last year was closer to like 400 or 500.
I think it was actually only 342 teams. I think. I think that's
Uh,
actually that number. I think is too high. I'm pretty sure.
What that one's 370. 340 is the number of teams without buys, to my knowledge, and then
I
there's
see. I
about
see.
20-ish in things. So 370 overall, yes.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the smaller Vegases. I think there might have been one smaller that I've gone to, but maybe the tier format one where it was like tier and full power cash.
Oh, no, that was
I
tier
kind of
got banned
remember
right
that one
before
being.
that. That was
Yeah.
yeah.
It was like it was
Essentially,
supposed to be tier format and ended up like
yeah.
was
The last
dying,
Vegas you went to was like 1,500 players, right? Like I think it was over 500 teams, right?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think part of that was the scheduling, like being like WrestleMania weekend. The hotels were ridiculous, the flights were ridiculous. Like Uber was insane. Like the whole
Yeah.
weekend was like really expensive for people to attend, especially if you didn't book like way in advance. Like if you didn't know about like how big WrestleMania was going to be, like the whole weekend, you were kind of shit out of luck. But I don't really think it had anything too much to do with like the meta. I think the meta was like mostly fine. Like whatever.
I think I agree. Like I think there's issues, but we'll kind of transition into that. We're hopping
Uh,
talking. Sorry, talking about ban
Oh,
lists.
I was gonna say I had one thing that I wanted to look at in that top
Oh,
16.
sure.
I have
Centoli
something else
was
as well.
okay.
Oh, please.
Centoli was talking about how the Archmage deck isn't like one of those decks where you look at it and it's like, how did it top? The Enneacraft deck that topped is one of those decks. I do want to look at that deck.
All
I
right.
don't think that deck had a go second card in the main deck. I'm pretty sure it's 41 go
Hey,
first cards.
Destructive Daruma Cannon. Go second dog.
It
There's
is
no-
actually 41 go first cards.
Can't you just make main shifter in this deck as well? And he's
I
like choosing
don't
not to.
know.
Yes.
I
Yes.
have no idea.
Yes, you can. You can.
I have one experience playing against this deck ever, and it was at YCS Richmond, and I was in the middle of doing my Malice combo, and I was ready to throw up, and I gave the dude the win and left. That's my only experience with this deck. I don't know how this deck wins going second.
I don't
I
have
mean,
any
you guys are
experiences.
surprised because you don't play Master Duel, where I just queue into constantly people playing decks just like this, where it's 90% when they're going first, 10% going second, and are surprised. And I don't mean to, it's not throwing insults. That's a strategy, especially for a 3v3. Like, you can have that, and if it's your day,
Yeah.
then you're fine. And if not, your teammates can pick up that bad luck. It's not necessarily criticism of this deck building at all. It's a it's a strategy you can by all means take. But it's definitely something that most people try to move away from, where they min-max non-engine stuff like this. But like I said, if he wins die rolls, then it's his day. And sometimes I don't know what matchups there are, but if you just set cards, sometimes your opponent gets set face down. I don't know.
I mean, Yummy probably doesn't do too much into this deck if I had to guess. Like, I assume you can beat some Yummy going second. I'm not exactly sure what the deck does. I'm not gonna lie. But like when in my head, I'm like, Yummy can't do too much to like set cards, like interact from hand. Like they don't have too many interactions in that regard.
I just can't believe there's not even a Fua in his main deck.
Besides it, don't you
I
worry.
mean, it is one of these decks where you do have to play all engine. I'm not saying you can't play zero non-engine, but it's not like, again, I kind of have a little bit of experience with this deck, rogue knowledge. It's not super waiverless. Like I said, I think it would be have a little bit more non-engine in the main. Fissures and Dream Mechanics are a lot, but when you open 5-foot monsters, if your opponent just starts panicking and they don't know how to interact, then you can definitely win games off that. Like, some of the flip effects are very powerful. Like, there's just Dreamer on it, or if they interact with your face down monsters and you said Dreamer Cannon, and then they just start trying to go battle phase early, and then you just Daruma them for everything, then you can definitely get there. It's I agree with Hogan in the sense I am surprised it's topped, but it's it does what the deck does, and you have a good Darrow in it, and you steal 1 or 2 games going second that you shouldn't, because people don't understand the interactions, then and you can get there. So
Yeah, the one thing I was gonna add is like I actually spoke with I did a little bit of coaching for this event, and like they asked like 3v3 like strategy is something that people discussed, and I was like, there's not really too much that I can really offer. Like I think it's pretty silly to try and metagame it. But in my head, if your goal is to try and cheese an event, this is one of the worst ones to do. Just because like if you're going to try and sack someone like with a deck like let's say Enneacraft, or like if you view the Lunalight deck as like pretty inconsistent, like high rolly, whatever. I'm just giving an example. Like you're like okay, like Liger is the game plan if you get out or whatever. It feels really bad to like let's say like you cheese out your win like with Enneacraft, or like let's say Coder like does this with Canine, like you cheesing out your win as in a match, and then like you still have the opportunity to lose because of your teammates, I think makes those decks marginally worse. Because like you're adding additional variance to a deck that already needs variance to win. Um, so that would be my recommendation is like if you just like think you're good and have a good team, then just like play good decks. Just that way, like the games that you get varianced by bad luck or retalcy, like in Centolia's case, are okay. I just have good teammates on good decks that are going to win their matches, and it doesn't matter like the decks that need variance to win want to max or minimize additional outside forces, and in this situation, they're kind of adding it. So that's the only advice that I gave to them in terms of that. What was the other thing you wanted to talk about, Santoli?
what's funny how you brought that up with saying that Lunalight's this cheese deck, because my rant was about to go about Lunalight.
Perfect.
So naturally, my teammate played Lunalight. Luca, obviously, Master World Champion. Very, very good player. And after watching Luca and Ryan play this deck a lot, obviously another insane player. This deck is so beyond criminally underrated. Like, I think this is again another deck people have a bad perception of, and it's just completely insane. Like, I think there's legitimately an argument that this is just the best deck of the format, and no one plays it. The number of times where I watched him open 5 engine cards and just completely obliterate Dracotail boards. It's not even like, the small Dracotail board where they have 3 traps and 5 mean in hand. It's like, no, they have Mirror Jade, they have OG Albaz. They have absolutely everything fallen, and they still just lose the 6 engine cards. There's a game where Luca opponent he prulated his opponent on Mitsu Azamina. They hard drew Deception, so he ended with a negate plus full Mitsu board, plus Ash Bell giving 0 draws, and then I look back 10 minutes later and there's just a Liger attacking directly. Like, this deck is just so obnoxious in terms of how it gains card advantage, in the sense that it's like a lot of other decks where the board's kind of fake, and you, as soon as you're fusing something, you just gain advantage. And the difference between this and some of the other fusion decks is you don't really ever have to maintain board that well. Like, if you're summoning Cloud Chick and you get a dump, it's done its job. If something's hit the goalie hits the board and it gets its effect off, like, it's done its job. And then all of a sudden you stick a Liger and you're winning the game. Like, this deck is just so good in the hand traps going first. It's one of the only decks I think where you can just get double forward and it just doesn't matter. Like, you just do full combo and it's like, okay, you don't have outs, I win. Going second, you just blitz through everything with engine. It's a very, very difficult deck. I think a lot of people had bad takes on how to build this deck as well. Everyone's on Brand Fusion, which you can't. I think the extra deck is basically solved. If you want to scroll down to that, like, every piece in here is mandatory. The gravity controller, because it just comes off with linking off a monster that has 2 XYZ materials underneath it, or it used to put a fusion in the grave early to have Hound as a negate live. The extra's been perfected. It's like, I don't know what else to say. It's just, in my opinion, this is arguably the best deck of the format. And if more good players practice it and played it, I think it would have results like that. But it's just one of those decks that's super complicated and got a bad rep early on, that other than exactly those 2 players, and I apologize. I guess Tom also does.
Tom got top 4 with it, yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't. Those are the ones that come to mind. Those are the ones in my circle I've seen. Not to say there's not other good players who play it, but none of I think of the other known players are really playing this deck. And
Yeah, Tom didn't get second overall too, right?
I included him. I think it's just one of those things where if we had more time in the format, this would become one of the best decks, but we don't. So it's just going to be left on the wayside for me to rant about on this podcast.
Well, we appreciate the rants. But yeah, like, this is definitely different than what we initially saw. I think the 3 fractal adjustment was made relatively early when, like, in Rain Tech was more popular. Foolish Goods, I think, got added. I think that was like Ryan's main contribution that was that, like, cutting heavy poly. And this is a deck that he came on, like, whenever he got back in the TCG, I think sometime in, like, March or late February. This is what he started playing, and, like, he topped with it a lot. It doesn't surprise me that he found ways to make it good. And I think it's a good read, like, if you play very well, and like you said, like, it is able to gas through everything. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that, like, Luke is able to pick it up and perform very well with the deck. So, and then, like, I mentioned Tom, they played a Lunalight mirror match in top 8, which is, I think, one of the most insane things that I wasn't not insane, but, like, wasn't expecting to hear over the course of the weekend. And it looks like Tom's list is relatively similar. He means Impulse over Perulia, but same other engine counts, 1 heavy poly in the main, 2nd on the side. Those few distinctions. But with this extra deck, I think is 14 or 15 the same. He plays a Cross Sheep over Gravity Controller, so a lot of similarities. So yeah. Deck's good. Liger Dancer, good card. So we'll see if this deck kind of translates into Blazing Dominion format. Makes it sound like you're not super high on that, but we'll see if that ends up being the case or not.
Matchup spread definitely gets worse for sure. This deck just absolutely feasts on Dracotail. And the Cannon decks are very good as well, which I think a lot of decks can struggle with. It's hard to have a good matchup into both, but the deck does. I think Cool Tune with a million hand traps is just worse. So, but I think it'll come around again. So,
alrighty. So yeah, we can translate into Banlist, which will get us into Blazing Dominion. So, Tail, it's probably not too long for this world, boys. I'm not sure y'all's thoughts on it. Like, all right, let's this. Like, I think Tail in general relatively okay deck. I think the issues with it now is, like, the Brandon stuff. I think makes it a little too strong with, like, the additional ways to start. Like, if your goal was to hit Ketsu and Lulu to reduce the starters, playing cards like Brandon Fusion. I didn't look at Susie's list, but I was talking a little bit after the event. He was playing cards like Opening and Haliburst to just, like, maintain consistency in the deck. So Brandon Fusion being a Draco Tail starter, I think, is probably a bit of an issue in terms of Konami's eyes of what their goal for Draco Tail is. So I'm curious, like, do you think Draco Tail needs to get hit? Because in my eyes, if that deck's good, relatively good format, but like Draco Tail branded, Draco Tail, Magician's branded, whatever, like that's where the deck I think can become a little bit oppressive. So does the deck need to get hit? If so, how would you do so? Start with you, Logan.
Uh, I don't know if the deck necessarily has to get hit, but it will get hit. Um, there's a few different ways you could approach it. I think like the most likely thing is probably 5 mana to 1, either 5 mana to 1 or like continue to hit the spells like Rahu to 2, Rahu to 1. Rahu to 1 would probably just like kill the deck. Rahu to 2 would be kind of interesting, and like 5 mana to 2 would probably still be playable. If I were to hit the deck, I think I would probably target Branded Fusion to 1 and maybe Fallen on the Virtuous to 1. I think like the Draco Tail cards are totally fine. I don't really have a problem with those. The turn 0 5 mana is like pretty annoying, but doesn't really happen. I think like in, I don't know, 100, my last 100 matches, maybe like 7 or 8 times I had it happen like turn 0 5 mana where like it was like pitching actual good cards. So yeah, I would target the branded cards in some way. I think Virtuous to 1 or Virtuous to 2 even is probably fine. Virtuous to 2 is a little bit weird because like the Dracotail deck is totally happy to play 2, but it is just kind of like a starter hit to the card. Branded Fusion to 1 would be a good hit. I think Flame Ban is interesting. I would not mind Flame Ban, but I think if they only ban Flame, the deck would just probably remain the best deck. So there's a lot of different ways they could approach it. I think if they hit the deck at all, I think it'll be pretty balanced for the most part, or it'll just be unplayable depending how hard they hit it.
Totally.
All right, time for another rant. So
Uh-oh.
I think Justice Hunter format started off amazing, and it felt like every ban list, other than the one that just banned all the FTK stuff like pros and stuff, it felt like the format just got so much worse with every single ban list. And basically, the reason for that is I think that at the beginning of Justice Hunter format, there were 3 decks, the VSK9, Yummy, and Dracotail that all were very consistent, which is a good thing. And they all had very good tools for going second. And I think the problem with all these ban lists that have gone by is that they continue to remove the go second tools. Like we lost Ketu, we lost a Malulu, which also go second tool. We lost a Bean School, and it just means that when you go first, it's just harder to go. You break the board. And I think that now going to the ban list, continue to hear is that it's hard to really hit the Dracotail deck without hitting Dracotail cards further. Like there's just I think a lot of fusion replacements. So you kind of have to hit the Dracotail cards first to some level, but then you also just make the deck worse going second. And you will have still some ability to go first. You can replace with other fusion cards, but it's just creating the deck going from this super cool, super holy deck to something that is a lot more toxic. And it's something that was kind of inedible with the deck, but it's not something that I was particularly fond to see, and it lived through as it. I keep seeing these ban lists, and it's like this does not feel better. I agree with Logan's take, which was actually my take initially. So I agree with myself on banning Flame because that's a way of hitting the end board without hitting any pieces. But I think it's still at the point where if we're hitting Jigsaw names more and the deck dies, then that's just kind of the way it went. And we can revisit it months down the line if the brand cards ever get hit in the future, where we can then just unhit Dracotail cards and play pure Dracotail. But you can only have decks that last so much in the meta. We don't need another mouse scenario. Even if it is healthy deck, I'm fine with it hitting more and it just kind of falling to the wayside for a bit. I think that when you have more hits, it's not going to be continue to be this super enjoyable. I don't think it'll become super toxic, but I think you're just getting a deck that's still more annoying to play against than currently.
Yeah, I think I'm it's not great, but like the interesting thing about this whole situation is like a lot of these cards are just like branded support, and Draco uses them better. So if you ever want pure branded to be a deck, which may or may not be the case, but like a lot of this support was for the Albaz archetype. So if you ever want to like justify that deck being played in its pure variant, like you probably do have to do a lot more Draco Tail to justify that. Um, and Brandon may be an interesting deck with cards like Dominus Spark in the format. Like I think it has a good, okay, cool tune matchup. I'm not exactly sure. But like Mirror Jade's a good card. So
Very
if you
good.
ever want to push that deck in the meta, may not be the case, but like you made all Albaz support, feels like that's kind of the goal. It may just be time to take Draco Tail out back, and like you said, maybe at some point in the future revisit and like put those cards back up, but like they're the best fusion deck right now, and unless you do something I think pretty drastic, where like limiting Rahu or whatever, like it's gonna be pretty easy to like splash them in, and maybe it's better if like Brained is like the primary focus, and like you have like a small Draco Tail engine or whatever. Maybe that'd be like a different way to play the deck, but I think right now the pure Draco Tail deck with Simena and Arflion and that build is maybe a little played out. It may be interesting to like see different fusion piles kind of pop up because right now those cards are pretty oppressive in terms of the fusion approach to the game. So I don't think I have any ads in terms of what to ban. I think we mentioned Flame a while ago. Rahu to one's probably the good one. 5 mana to one. Any of those is solid. I think maybe like if you limit the spells, you could put Malulu back up to a bigger number. That way, like you kind of encourage pure Draco Tail. But because the best part of the deck is just the spells, like that is like the primary reason why the deck is strong going second. So theoretically, you could do that, but it probably just like defeats the purpose of like trying to limit the deck's playability. So maybe at some point in the future, like you leave the spells at one and bump Malulu up, but it's probably not right now. Probably sometime in the future when Draco Tail is out of everyone's palettes. Next, I think is Yummy. Do y'all want that deck dead? Do y'all really care? Like, I don't really know.
Yes.
All right, what are you doing? Just banning Cups Yummy way? Just kill all the bridges?
Yep. I mean, I
It's
think
one
that
good way.
argument, I think that's argument is kind of fake a little bit, because we had a lot of hybrid variants, but a lot of the variants actually didn't bridge through Cups Yummy way. Like the Mitsu version bridged through Zombie Vampire, and the Rain Typhoon engine initially bridged through Shureg. That being said, it's kind of weird because if you hit Cups Yummy way, I think the deck just dies. Like, what is Cookie doing by itself or Lollipop? So the deck really is killed, and I think that some of the hybrids are fine. Like I don't really hate playing against Sulfa Yummy or even Fiend System. I think it's fine, but the problem is I think the plays are just really bad at this point. I really enjoyed Yummy when it first came out when we had a Bean School because a Bean School when you resolved it going second was insane, which is fine. Like
Yeah.
by all means have go second tools, but going first it was almost worse than some of your other starters.
Yeah, it was awful.
So I think the deck was the healthiest then, and now it's just kind of come to this deck where it's efficient into hand traps, and I'm gonna hand trap you a bunch, and you're gonna pass to nothing, and I just hate that gameplay. It just kind of feels like
Yeah.
Malice Light. It's not quite as bad because it is more interactable, and it's definitely not as all or nothing, but it's still just one of these hand trap deck that's I'm not a fan of.
So it's like it's not Tenpai level going second, but like it kind of feels that way where it's just like I'm gonna breaker you and then just like kill you because I have whatever 4 2K buys that you can't even do shit into. Like there is not a relevant hand trap in the game that really stops that combo, if they like sequence at all reasonably. So that'd be my gripe with the deck. I mean, like, what do you want to do? Like, ban Minion, ban Snatchy? Like, I don't think like limiting
Cups
Cup
away.
Seed is anything meaningful, but I think like it kind of has to be a ban of a relevant card to limit the deck's viability.
The option is hitting Cupsy itself because a lot of the other Yummy stars are just really bad. It means you can just reliably hand trap Cupsy away, but I don't know. It's one of these things where it's like, how many times do we want to hit a deck and have it just be meta still? And I think the power level of the next set is actually a bit lower than currently. So if we get away with light hits on decks again, I think they just stay the best decks. So I'm fine hitting things harder and unhitting later than having the Malice syndrome of, oh, we're just going to do a light slap on the wrist when, this kid's burning the school down every Wednesday. They could just get rid of it.
Logan, any thoughts?
I think my like ideal approach would be to first ban Hornet drones to just get rid of the Camellia bridges.
Oh, that is a good one. Yes.
Yeah, and for the actual like Yummy cards, I think obviously banning Cupsy Yummy Way would just like kill the deck. I'm more of a fan of banning Lollipop Yummy Way, because it keeps like the Yummy deck at its core doing what it does, where you can just set up like a mid-range board, but it prevents them from getting the infinite bodies and also the nib player-ons to like bridge into everything. So I think that would be like a pretty reasonable hit to keep the deck viable, but also prevent some of like the crazy M board like FTK bridge like pile decks from existing.
Yes, sir.
I like that. That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that for a Banlist video and say it's my own idea.
Perfect.
Go for it.
And then I think the last relevant meta deck that is worth discussing is Malice. I still want to play the deck a little bit lately. Just ban Red Ransom or Cryptor. I don't give a shit at this point.
No,
It's
ban
fine?
Dormouse. Why are we doing
Okay.
this?
Ban
Ban
them all, like,
Dormouse.
ban literally. They could just put every card that says Malice on the ban list and it'd be fine. Like I don't care at this point, dude.
Are we not afraid of the Canine VS deck? Is that deck
I am.
okay?
Okay.
I think that deck's got to go.
All right, so we're banning Dormouse and we're like what limiting to Roy or like ban Holy Sue?
Nope.
I'm banning
Just ban
Holly Sue.
Ripper. I disagree with you.
I like ban Ripper too.
I also like Ban
The
Ripper,
thing-
but I think they don't do it.
I think the thing with Holy Sue is while it's a very it's only a discussion card when you hard draw it turn 0. Like if my opponent goes first and they search it in combo and it's just something they have access to the rest of the game because they're managing it correctly, I don't really hate the card that much. Like it seems fine. And yes, a high roll sometimes going first, but I don't think it's so brutal that it needs to get banned because of that. The big question is just why is Ripper a card?
Yeah.
We're just gonna make the deck completely immune to hand traps. Like it's such an damage heavy deck, and you're just immune to hand traps. I truly don't understand the design philosophy behind that card at all. Like they're so, again, there's always so close to being able to make these cards good. Like imagine it just said if your opponent activates a card in their hand while they control a card in the field, detaching a gate. Like there's just ways of hitting it, but it just being installation for hand traps, I think is disgusting. Like as soon as you ban Ripper, all of a sudden it becomes so much better. And yes, it's kind of the identity of the K9 deck, but I think the design behind that card is just so awful that
Also, like
it needs to go.
generic rank 5 bridging into it, I think is a bit, whatever. Like Holy Super Xiaolong bridging into it, I think is pretty silly. So I mean, I have been a proponent of banning Ripper for a while. It just doesn't seem like they're interested in doing it. I think if they want to hit the deck and Ripper is not on their list, I think Holy Sue is probably the only other card they could ban that meaningfully does something. I guess you go back to like limiting Rosin, but it feels like that kind of was antithetical to what they wanted to do because they like
I
put it
think
back to 3
ban
quickly.
Saryuja is like a pretty
work
good
too.
overall starting point as well.
Yeah,
That
honestly, that
card
card
is
didn't exist, so it works
that
out,
card's
yeah.
never involved in anything fair.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, the thing with the K9 deck is it just won a YCS without VS cards. So the problem is clearly Ripper.
Mhm.
Get rid of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
A perfect world, yeah, Ripper gets banned. I really don't think they're gonna do it. If they don't do it, I think hitting another part of the K9 engine is probably fair. I think actually banning a case for K9 would be fairly relevant.
that would work
Making
too.
Lantern not
Okay.
have like a good search and also making Noroi not having a good send is pretty interesting.
Mhm.
But I also don't know. For some reason, I just don't feel like they're gonna touch any of the K9 cards.
Yeah, they want to push the
Pretty
Armage
scary.
support, so it makes sense,
Yeah.
Alrighty, so and at most we generally don't discuss cards that come off the list, but is there anything else I can think of? Like obviously like ban Di-Fi, ban Shifter, like the normal stuff. But like, is there anything else I can think
DDG,
of? Yeah, DDG. Like anything else you can think of off the top of your head that needs to get
cross out.
sure.
Mitsu should get hit as well.
It's yeah.
It just got reprinted, so I don't think they need to kill it. The thing is as well, they're not even using that much for bridges right now. The pure Mitsu deck is being played, which I don't particularly have a hatred for that deck. I don't love it, but it's fine. I always say if you want to knock it down a lot, just ban the trap. It's just top on the board they don't need. If you have to play Magatom instead, the deck's still playable. It loses some power. If you love Mitsu, it's fine. It's also just kind of weird because it's not really in the identity of Mitsu. Like it's the only negate in the archetype. So I would like that one banned because if you want to hit Mitsu, I think Reproductus can also go because it's been used for a little bit of evil. And it's just one of those cards where this card is never being used for good.
Yeah, all fine with me.
100%.
In terms of unbans, nothing comes to mind. Like, who cares? Generally,
Yeah, there's like bad cards that could come back, like Ultimate
Yeah.
Offering, Return from Different Dimension.
Sacred
But
Tree.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, sure. But giving Ituria more support, make Nat. I mean, ban Nat. Like, I don't know if Nappy needs to get banned or anything like that, but
I don't even hate Nappies, to be honest. Like, I'm not saying it's a healthy card, but it's like there's so many breakers now that interact with it that it's significantly less of a concern than it once was.
yeah, that's fair.
for sure.
Alrighty, so next up is Blazing Dominion, and this kind of leads into that. So, from what Santoli you said, and from what I've heard, like, unless there is a ban list, a deck like Draco Tail is still very prominent in next format, even into a deck like Cooltoon, which we kind of anticipate to be very, very strong. So I'll let you kind of give the initial thoughts, and then I'll kind of add what I've been spectating.
So there's 4 main decks to talk about for Blazing Dominion. One is Cooltoon, which gets more support. Basically, it's best support. And then there's the 3 lower decks, so Archmage, Doomsday, and Elenotes. Cooltoon is by far the best one of them. It's the only one I think is really a tier 1 contender without a list. It's kind of just better Yummy, maybe better Yummy. It's around Yummy's playstyle as well, where It just plays a bunch of hand traps. It tries putting you on a very small board, and then tries cracking it. I think it is one of those decks as well that is kind of just hand trapped to death. The difference is the deck is very, very difficult, because now rather than just going, oh, I have a link 1 and a level 1, and I'm going to do synchro for synchro 2, it's now all different levels, and it's not obvious at all how things bridge into each other. It's not like you're synchro climbing. You have to have a lot of understanding of what you're trying to end with from the beginning of the turn. I absolutely hate the design that they put on the Cool Toon cards for no reason, where they just have these toxic effects like extra deck grips, hand looking. I think the extra grip's actually fine. It's kind of annoying, but not the end of the world. But the hand looking and the stacking deck are just completely toxic mechanics, which I don't get why they're there at all. But that being said, it's like the deck is lower power level for sure, and it's complicated, and so it doesn't really get a pass for having those. But the format should be more manageable than just the initial look at with these toxic mechanics, because the deck has redeeming qualities otherwise. I think if it didn't have those toxic mechanics, the deck would be a very, very healthy meta deck, and so with them, it's gone from very healthy to fine. It shouldn't be an awful format warper. And then if we get a list, then I think it's just default the best deck, given the list is meaningful in any way.
Yeah. So from what me having read the Cool Toon cards and watched a little bit of the gameplay, it is already in like my top 5 most hated decks of all time, just due to the mechanics that it involves. For those who are unaware, it has effects that look at your opponent's extra deck and rip cards. I think it also has random extra deck banishes.
Yep.
Look at your opponent's hand and also stack the top card of your opponent's deck. It's like look at the top 2, banish 1, put the other one on top or bottom. Which is just like a pretty miserable experience to play against. Obviously Santo's gonna say build your deck better to avoid these things, but I think as just like someone who plays Yu-Gi-Oh, those are generally effects that. Oh my God, Santoli died. Um, he heard me talk shit about Cool Toon,
he
and
did the disappearing act.
yeah, he wanted to get out of here. So I still move back in a second, but yeah, like I just like read all those card effects, and I'm just like that is pretty miserable. Don't want to play with those. Um, yeah, don't want to play with those really ever in Yu-Gi-Oh. So pretty unfortunate that they were going to be in the game. Like this is like kind of what ruined cash format for a lot of people, including myself. Like cash mirror, you can argue whatever is interactive, not bad, but like the barrier to entry of playing good games of Yu-Gi-Oh became substantially higher. It's because like every game started with macrocosms on the field. Logan, have you played the deck or experienced it at all?
I haven't played with any of the new cards yet. I've read over all the Cool Toon cards and looked into like some of their combos. Um, the deck is interesting to me because from like playing the deck, like a perspective of like actually taking the deck to the tournament, I really like the idea of Cool Toon because it plays essentially no bricks. And it plays a absurd amount of non-engine. It's like 18 starters and 18 or 19 non-engine, and then like your brick is like JJ Cool Toon and maybe like Cyframe.
Oh no.
Joy that the deck is like very consistent and plays a lot of non-engine, but from a gameplay perspective, I'm not so sure about it. The ripping the extra deck and stuff seems less relevant in the mirror match because the deck can just kind of just play 3 of everything, so it doesn't matter all that much. If we get to a format where it's like mostly just Cool Toon, I don't think it'll be as obnoxious. But if we're in more of a format where it's like YCS Vancouver, where there's like all the new decks, but also all the old decks are still relevant, I think Cool Toon could be like a really annoying deck to have in the meta and could be like it's like not very fun to play against. In terms of the other decks, Doomsy, I looked into very briefly. I've seen comparisons to Memento, which I actually like the Memento deck a lot, so I might look into that. And then the other deck, the Elf Note deck, I've heard that deck is like a go first glass cannon deck that just like loses to all hand traps, or like FTKs you. I don't know how accurate that is. If that's the case, that doesn't sound very very fun to be in the meta. So I'm not too excited about these new cards, but we'll see how it goes. You know, a shakeup is kind of needed. We've been kind of in the same format for a while.
Anything else to add, Steven?
Yeah, so just revisiting the Cool Tool point, I think the quicker you accept the toxic mechanics exists, the better, because the deck has have redeeming qualities. And I'm one to go and complain about toxic mechanics. as much as I can, and they are toxic, but the deck was designed well enough elsewhere that it should be interesting. It's definitely not something where they just go and look at your hand and it's, oh, I obviously play around all these cards super easily, and they can go and do that. Especially how many pet cards are in the meta nowadays. Like it's super hard to actually know how to play around absolutely everything. Like it's not something that you can just kind of spreadsheet out, because there's so many more breakers, there's so many more hand traps, Dharma's cards that you may not even see in pairs, because maybe your opponent's just playing something weird and they can play like Spiral and Impulse. So I think, like I said, it's the Tux mechanics are there, but the format should be redeeming enough, and I am looking forward to it. Usually I'm pretty negative at formats at the beginning because I'm just skeptical about the gameplay and the comeback mechanics, but I think that this one should be decent, at least until Nats. The other decks to talk about, so it's the three lore decks. So the Doomsday is kind of like Memento. It's definitely not the same level. Memento is a very, very engine heavy deck, and Doomsday is as well, but it feels like Memento just has so much more gas in Doomsday. I think the Doomsday lines are a lot less long than the Memento. Memento has so many ones you're going through. Doomsday is not that. It is somewhat comparable to Memento, but I think it's more of a combination between like Fire King and Memento. I think Fire King is maybe a closer thing where they're getting direct effects off from being popped. And the end board isn't, this crazy unbreakable board. It is kind of a bit more mid-rangey. So
Unchained as a comparison as well. I'm not sure how.
Yeah, Unchained's actually probably the best one. I think it's tier 2. I think it's tier 2 right now, again, depending on list, but I think that it's worse than everything we have right now. The Elvino deck is also a go first deck. I don't think its tools for going second are awful. It's not like you can only go first for that, but I don't think there's anything really special about it going second. And I also don't think its end board is that insane. Like it's not Malice where they just summon one guy and it gets absolutely everything, and then you hand trap the Dormouse. Well, I have a Bish Shield and I just beat another Imprint by itself. Like it doesn't trade amazingly into fair hand traps if you don't have a number of extenders. I mean, it's not clunky. There's a fair few bad draws. So again, I think it's just a tier 2 deck. It's fine. It's a combo deck of the format. I think we'll see a lot of experimentation with the deck. There's already a lot of that in the OCG where they're playing like the Fallen package in it, just as another like way of synchroning the 8. The last one is of course Archmage, and if the K9 cards die, I think it's just a lateral kind of movement in power level where if they get some new cards, they lose the K9 cards. I think it's a nerf if anything, because the K9 cards are really good. But it's again probably just sitting at tier 2. If we get a big enough list, then all these decks can go to tier 1 and tier 1.5. But the big thing is I just think that you just have a lot of kind of the older decks that were in tier 2 limbo for a while just be better positioned. Something like Sky Striker, maybe Memento itself. Maybe you have if I pull up list of things, Rain Typhoon. I think those decks just get better. So I think we'll have a bit more of the tier 2 decks we have right now move up to the tier 1 format than having any of the lore decks really be tier 1. Again, I don't think they're awful. They'll be high tier 2, but I think they'll be cool tune as well as some of the decks we have right now. Oh, Magnet War is another big one where we can just have that deck really start performing if we have some of the other ones hit right now. So
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
isn't there a clown deck coming out too?
yes,
I saw a DB Grinder video today with the clown deck.
That's
I have no idea if
it's
those
TCG
cards are
exclusive
good.
or
I don't think so.
nope.
I haven't heard.
That is a Giga draw deck, so they can draw like 6 cards, which sounds broken until you realize that's what the deck does in its entirety.
But that's
Obviously it does other stuff where you do more than that, but you kind of just have to build your deck in such a weird way where you want to have a lot of reward off drawing cards, and it's something I'm kind of interested in to experiment with. Maybe it's for fun regional deck, but not until we at least get the new support from Nats. The Nats set does get a bit more support, but it's low tier 2, tier 3. It's functional, but nothing amazing.
Speaking of draw cards, one thing we might have glossed over in the ban list thing. What do you guys think about Radiant Typhoon Visions getting hit?
Nonsense.
I
You don't think it needs to get hit?
Probably.
What about like the Radiant Typhoon deck in general?
No.
I don't think I ever cared about Radiant Typhoon. Like, also, like, yeah, if I was gonna hit a card, I guess Vision is the most generic, but I kind of like those cards that have like different utility. Where Vision is like a deep draw card or like a MST like theoretical breaker going second. Which is why I
Yeah.
wouldn't really love Fallen the Virtuous getting hit. I think those cards that like have strong utility, like those are cards that I think are good for Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yep.
So
I agree.
currently I don't think they need
I-
to get hit. I would like if they make Striker more like a little bit more playable, God bless. But like until you're just like Vision also being once per turn means that like the Radiant Typhoon deck can't really do anything super impressive with it. So like I'm not super concerned. Like I
Visions
think I'm
is a
sorry.
it's a +0.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you're discarding a card and it's doing something. I'm not going Allure, Banish, Dormouse.
Mhm.
I'm literally just discarding a spell and putting it in my grave.
Yeah.
Like there's zero reason to hit that card. Fallen
Yeah.
a bit more reasonable because it's a very powerful card, but I think it's cards that strength are in the longer games are generally cards I don't want to get hit because if Fallen feels broken, it means you've had a grind game to some degree. But I think Visions is the most nonsensical hit I've heard and I've seen on some of these lists, and
I've seen it a lot recently. I've
makes
seen
no
it
sense.
like almost every list.
I don't understand how you could see want Vision hit over like any card that says pot in it. Like
Mhm.
that card says +1 and Vision does not. So
Yeah. If they wanted to hit the Radiant deck for whatever reason, I think you just like hit Totem Bird and call it a day.
sure.
Which
Yeah, like
I
if
don't
you-
even really think that's necessary, but I would be
Yeah,
happy
Radiant
with
Typhoon I never really cared about as like a deck. Like when I was like, okay, this deck's good, then like who cares? Like
Yeah, it's fine.
It's
They
the
let you
fourth.
play every game.
Yeah, it's the fourth most performing deck, best performing deck right now, in terms of top. So maybe it's in that window where it can get hit, but I just think it's such a like I guess that's the reason where maybe you look at the deck and think Visions is just the best card in the deck. So it's not even that you're hitting it for the splashability of it. It's just you want to hit RT, and how do we hit RT?
it'd
You
be
hit
Presea.
Visions.
Like that would be like the card that hits pure Radiant, right? Like if you wanted to hit something like that or Eldom or Chance, like those are the cards that actually matter.
I rarely have problems with like any Yu-Gi-Oh deck that just lets you play on turn one.
Yeah.
Because I think like better players can just take advantage of it. Like even going back to like Runic Stun, like a lot of people had problems with Runic Stun. I never had a problem with that deck. If you knew how to build
Yeah.
your board, like you just beat it.
Yeah.
Like
I,
if you let
I
me play, I'm gonna win. I just have to draw engine.
I honestly don't know why I would hit from RT to if I wanted to hit it. I guess Visions from that way if you're arguing solely from hitting the deck, but I also don't think that a lot of people care about that deck being hit. It is also new. It's only been out of set, and it's not, it's the fourth best deck, but it's not dominating by any means. So
Mhm.
I'm kind of happy to let this just slide for another list, and if it stays tier 1 again, then we can revisit hitting it then. But
Yeah, I think
the play style is something I really like.
Fissure would also be like a pseudo hit to that deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just hit all the shifter, the DeFi cards, and then Radiant Typhoon
Yep.
is just like a relatively fair deck that inherently has issues going second and going first doesn't do anything impressive. So like, who cares? Like, I don't give a shit about that deck existing in the format. Like, if you look,
agree.
like, I'm not gonna here. I'll pull up Vegas again. There is no top in 48 decks that made top 16. There's not one Radiant Typhoon deck. There are 2 striker decks. Like, you can argue to hit Engage more than you could Vision to me right now, based off of this performance. So yeah, I think that is very silly. And like you could look at these top ends and be like, okay, Fallen the Virtuous, that card's good. Like that card is probably more represented than any Radiant Typhoon card in Top Cut. So like that has more of an argument. But again, like DeFi, Shifter, all those cards are the actual oppressive things that Radiant Typhoon does. Like you said, Totem Bird, if you actually want to get specific, but like otherwise, I don't care about that deck existing. Like it struggles to play through a single Mourner half the time. Like I'm not gonna go out of my
I
way
mean, I
to
don't
hit
agree with
that deck.
that. But yeah,
Uh,
it's perfectly healthy. We can keep it around for a while.
Sure, yeah. Alrighty. I think that about wraps it up. Any final thoughts on Blazing Dominion
Yes.
format where we're at? Like, I think I'm gonna look back on this format of Yu-Gi-Oh relatively fondly. I don't have any major issues with it. Like obviously there's issues. Like you can ban Shifter, ban DieFi. Like, I don't think it's a perfect format, but I think in terms of like the decks that are viable, and a lot of the games of Yu-Gi-Oh in general are better than we've had over the past few years. Like, I'm not gonna say it's perfect, but I prefer this over like Snake Eye format personally. I'm not sure if it's a hot take, but that's where I'm at with it.
I guess I'll speak a moment to that just because I've been making faces.
Sure, yeah, please.
Like I said, I loved the release of Justice Hunters. I think that format was very, very good. Just because it was interesting going second. I think that the big thing with formats is how, and this goes back when you look back to older formats as well. It's not just a current issue or in card games in general, which is just how good are the comeback mechanics. So if you fall behind in the game, how good or how fun is it to try getting back in the game? What those mechanics? And I think that Alicia's Just Centers had a lot of good things. Holy Sue into the mirror match into Yummy felt fine and manageable. Obedience School was just a phenomenal card existed because even just the existence of those cards change how you have to play the game. Because you can't just go in and use all your interruptions on them just normal summoning Yummy monsters, because if the last card is a Bean School, you explode. It's almost like you have to let them play more and then try to layer things through so the Bean School doesn't get value. And Jigglypuff, I think, was just a very good deck in that meta because it could deal with Yummy very well, and then you have to have a game plan for VS, but it was somewhat manageable. And I think that format was just very good. And like I said earlier, it's just as the format's been on, we went from all these decks having very interesting comeback mechanics to them being just more go first and, good luck resolving or winning the game going second if you're not resolving chummies or if you're not resolving specific tech cards in specific matchups. So I really like the first half of the year, and then as we went on, the formats soured on me. And I haven't had as much success in terms of YCSs, so people are always gonna enjoy formats more where they have success. So that's obviously part of it. And I don't think this format's awful by any means, but it's not one I'm gonna particularly miss either.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be like anyone trying to play YCS Vegas format or Richmond
Yeah.
format, but I think it's above average in terms of when we look at Yu-Gi-Oh over the past 4 years. I think this is better than something we've had in
I
in
think
that timeline.
it's about average. I think it's worse than the initial Razor formats. I actually think it's
Sure.
worse than initial Snake Eye format. I actually have much fonder memories of it than I thought I did. Once Snake Eye Bellstar came out, that format got significantly worse. But
Yeah.
I think it's around the middle of the pack.
Fair enough.
One other thing to bring up quickly about the next format is the new tech cards that are coming out, because we talked
Oh
about
yeah,
decks.
that was something I wanted to spark in Phaedrius. I don't know the name of it in TCG.
Yes, Harmonia. I don't know either. My pronunciation is always bad, and if I did know it. Side note, at the YCS, quick story is I had some guy ask me what language I was speaking to Luca, who is obviously European. He speaks a bunch of languages, so it's fair to question it. But I can only speak one language. I just talk very fast sometimes, and so I just told him I'm trying to speak English, and yeah, we all had a good laugh about that. Anyways, new cards, new tech cards. So the main one is Harmonia, which is a hand trap that you can only be used in synchro decks or decks that don't rely on their extra deck at all, aka voiceless support. When your opponent activates something on the field, you summon it, you pop a card, and then you get sent a synchro from your extra deck. So it's non-targeting pop, and you can send a synchro, which can be further interruptions in the form of Malong or Pack Bet, or it can get you to engine if you're playing any light spellcaster deck that has the same attack and defense for their spellcaster guy through Thespian Lulu Wraith. That card is very, very good, but like the Dominus cards, it will not be usable in everything. But it is it's just a super strong card, obviously. Non-targeting pop, where you can just kind of use it in the middle of their combo and pick apart multiple pieces. It also functions as a board breaker. It probably is one of the best hand traps I've ever read. And then we also have the new Dominus card, which is Better Spiral. So it has the Canine condition. They have to have use a monster effect in grave or hand this turn, and then you can target a monster in their field and banish it. If you do not have a trapper in their grave, they get to special monster from their hand, which usually isn't that impactful. I guess it's matchup dependent. And once again, this is just a very, very strong card. I think Spiral by itself is also just a strong card. It just kind of hasn't found a home yet. Where it just bounces something instead of banishes it. But this card's just a better version of Spiral. And I think both these cards are just phenomenal. And I think that it's hard for me to evaluate how much I like or dislike these cards, because I really dislike the decks that are just, I'm going to play a bunch of hand traps and stop you and then play my one card starter and go crazy. And these are just better cards for those types of decks. But at the same time, these cards are also just so powerful that they're also so good into those decks. And so it makes me almost think that it's going to hurt that kind of gameplay more, because you're just going to play a few of these, uber powerful hand traps, and you're going to have to play a heavier engine deck to beat these powerful hand traps. And if we lead to a more engine heavy format where you're playing these types of cards, then I think it's good. But if you're just having decks that are low engine, just trying to stop you completely, then I think these cards can kind of get annoying. And Tulkun is one of those decks where it can be used Harmonium, and it's very good, but it, we talked about the deck. It should be fine. It'll be interesting to see how these go, and how the community receives them. I think overall they're good cards. They'll be interesting to play with. And we'll see in a future episode if at any point maybe we consider banning them. But they are definitely going to be format warping, where if you can play these, then you will be playing them. Also, the other thing I really like about these cards is that they can kill hybrids. Because now it's not you're playing a synchro deck and you're going to start doing random fusion summoning or something. It's you're going to stick to your synchro summoning, and if you're playing light and dark deck, you don't get to randomly put in other archetypes that don't follow that. So I do like the restrictions that way to push us more towards these single archetypes decks and less of these pile nonsense, which I think is more enjoyable to play against when you're not having 5 engines resolve against you.
Yeah, I think that's an underrated thing that the Dominus cards did, was that they kind of led you into archetypes or like more coherent strategies, and you couldn't like splash too much. I think obviously when it comes to like light and dark, like there's decks that can just take a big abuse of that. Like you can play a 60 card, like we'll say Orcus Mitsu as a Mina deck, and like you can play Impulse and it's not a big deal. But in general, I agree with your approach that trying to like give decks that are, we'll say, like one track minded in terms of their approach, more power and more of a balance in terms of like, okay, you're making sacrifices because you don't have as much splash ability, but you have stronger non-engine to support it. I think is a good design approach that Kami's been taking more lately. So we'll see if how good Spark is in terms of the grand scheme of things. But Harmonia seems solid, but again, obviously there's restrictions to decks that
This
can
is
function with it.
the set that has a Solemn Report as well, right?
It
The
is,
yes.
right?
Solemn card. Yeah.
I can talk about this one.
All right, last one, then we'll hop off.
Yeah, so one last Sentinel I ran for the day. This card is very overrated. So what it does is if your opponent activates a spell or trap, first of all, it has that extra condition where if you set it, you can use it to turn its set. If you can reveal another set trap, I think it is,
Spell or trap.
which is cute. Yeah, spell or trap, which I think is cute, but most of the time this will be a side deck card for going second or going first. So that condition won't come up much. But maybe some weird deck plays it going first. I don't think that's generally the issue of it. The thing is
You're right. Sorry, it is a trap
other
card. My apologies.
Okay. The other thing is the other part of it, which is that if your opponent activates a spell or trap, you can activate this card and you can pay, I think, 3k life points and then banish all of that copy from the deck. And so a lot of people are going to look at this and going, this card is completely toxic. It's impossible to play Radiant Typhoon anymore. They're just going to hit the MST. It's impossible to play Sky Strike. They just hit engage. And the problem with that assessment is that I'm just not going to use those cards first. Like my entire deck is quick plays. I'm just going to play other quick plays. And the nice thing about quick plays is they generally clear stuff. Same with the RT and the striker cards. They're pretty good at removing things. And so if you're just sitting there with this card, waiting for the blowout card, and like I'm activating a pot of extravagance or desires, and you're just like, well, I'm just gonna hold for the power card. Well, that doesn't sound very good. And if you're hitting something like desires or extrav or just the first kind of spell where you're not getting value out of banishing multiple copies of them, then it's just a worse judgment because not all decks need to lead with their spell and trap cards. I have faith that this will be annoying in some metas, but it seems a lot more specific than people are giving it credit for. And I think that by the end of the format, it will fall out people's side decks unless you're a deck that's super scared of breakers. But with Cool Tune being the best deck and it being a very normal summon dependent deck where you just lead normal summon and get so much advantage, especially when it's trying to hand trap you to death, I think this card will fall the wayside very quickly. Getting hand trapped to death, setting one of these, and then having them go any Cool Tune normal summon, you will quickly realize that this is not a good card in the side deck. It should just be a striker judgment. So, solid card, but I think it's not as game warping as some people are going to kind of praising it's going to be.
Yeah, I think the way that Yu-Gi-Oh has been lately, especially so like whenever Chummies got introduced, and you kind of have to like generically have 3 to 6 going first cards. Those cards need to be relatively generic. That's why a lot of people start putting more engine in their side decks. Or you put in a card like Dimensional Fissure, which is good against, we'll say, like 60% of the meta, or like most represented deck plus in the meta. And when it looks like this format, obviously has Cool Tune, very strong deck, but it'll be like, we'll say 6 or 7 decks deep on average. You can't really do something that like only respects decks 3, 4, and 5 or whatever. Like you need to be pretty diverse in your going first options, or not more flexible. Like you have engine cards, you have cards that work across the board. And if you only hit, like I said, decks 3, 4, and 5, that may be only 15 to 20% of the room, which is way too small of a commitment for going first in those matchups only. So that's why a card like Red Sea I think is so much more valuable because against like we'll say Draco Tail because it works first and second against like their best cards, and Report is a little bit more conditional. So we'll see if this card ends up being defining of anything. I think I agree with Centola that it's very oppressive in situations where it does resolve. But overall, I think it's probably going to be a little too slow for modern Yu-Gi-Oh in terms of how oppressive it is. And like you're like, oh, like you can go second and use it, but like who's keeping trap cards in their deck going second? And one more thing to add is a lot of decks right now, outside of we'll say like Radiant Typhoon, which is setting 5, like they set like cards in engine, and that's like you kind of know where the cards that are known versus not known, so you can kind of pick apart the ones that you're concerned with. Like if Report is probably one of 2 different cards that are set, and this is also ignoring cards that like Storm and Duster in the format. So I think I wouldn't be as concerned about this as some people. Again, very explosive when it doesn't resolve, but we have Dimensional Fissure and Shifter in the format. Like this card is nowhere near that power level in terms of how oppressive it can be. So I
It'll have
think,
its formats, but
yeah, like
nothing more.
agreed. Alrighty. Thank you, Centola, for joining us. Much appreciated as always, sir. Logan, me and you are going to be taking a little bit of a hiatus. I think neither of us are going to Columbus. Are you going to make it out there, Centola?
Yep.
Okay. So we may have you back on when it comes close to that time to give us a bit of a breakdown because I may be on a little bit of a break. I'll probably play regional here and there, but I don't have anything up between now and the WCQ. Got life to take care of, but yeah, it's gonna be a good time. Yeah, Blazing Dominion comes out in 2 weeks. We'll obviously do YCS recaps whenever that comes up. We'll still try and do it, I think, bi-weekly at this point. We'll see if Rahan's able to make it back to us. He's been busy with work, but otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.